It was kind of a sink or swim moment. I didn't plan on it, but I got up in the morning and I was like, today's my last day. I have to do this. I have to do it for me. I have to do it.
Welcome to the SGV Master Key, a show where you will hear personal stories of triumph over failures and how others successfully navigated the unique landscape that is the San Gabriel Valley. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we have chosen the San Gabriel Valley for our home or businesses or both. We believe it is the people and small businesses that make this community great, and we love to share their stories with you. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at sgvmasterkey.com. Here are the hosts for the show, Russell Mono and Scott Warmoth.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key podcast. This is a show, if you're new here, where we bring you an in-depth look at the people and businesses that make up our great community here. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. And just a reminder, like we said last week and the week before, we've partnered now with SGV Now, your source for local information, news, and events in the San Gabriel Valley. You can check them out at sgvnow.com and on Instagram, sgv.now. So check them out. Scott, our guest today is in a business that is of great interest to you, right? You're always interested in advertising,
marketing.
Numbers.
Yeah, I like marketing. I grew up, my father was in the marketing world, and so it was always kind of part of my life. From a very young age, I would think of marketing ideas and always talk to my dad about it, and advertising and marketing. So really, it's the one area of the business that is really thrilling to me is like just marketing,
And if you know Scott personally, or if you've listened to this show, you'll know that Scott is a wizard with numbers, right? And so marketing has a lot to do with numbers as well, right? You're really interested in digging into seeing those numbers and following what's going on.
Yeah, tracking campaigns, how much money you put into something, what's the result, and you need to know those numbers as a business person. You need to know if I'm putting X dollars into something, I need to make sure I get the equivalent back, or more, should be more. And our guest today is in marketing full time, and that's her passion. She actually is the queen of direct response marketing, and some numbers on her that impressed me is, 1/3 of all the buses in LA County at one point or another carry advertising that was placed by her. So, that's deep penetration into a specific marketplace. So I guess we should introduce our guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So our guest today is Ryan Christiansen. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Very excited.
Did I pronounce your last name okay?
You did.
Okay. So
But you didn't pronounce the first name correctly. No, I was joking.
Oh.
That was a joke. Not a funny one, but it is a joke.
So Ryan, we talked a little bit about your background, where you grew up, but what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
So I lived in the San Gabriel Valley for about 2 decades. I have 2 adult children. My son is 25 and my daughter is 22. And from a young age, I had them in LA Unified. And I just wanted to get a better education for them. And I wanted them to have more opportunities. And the area where we were living in at the time wasn't the best area, a little scary. Wasn't anywhere that you would let your kids go anywhere walking by themselves or anywhere you wanted to be out after dark. So I moved to Temple City and enrolled my children into Longden Elementary, and I loved it. Small town, just even to this day, my son, he's graduated, he's gone to college, he's done all his things, and he still has his Temple City friends. They just kind of are more of a family, and it's just different from anywhere else that I've ever lived or ever, the way that I was brought up in Los Angeles. Temple City, it was just night and day.
Yeah, it's one of those nice communities in the valley here. It's something that should resonate with a lot of our listeners because, people here will move to a particular city just to be in the school district. I mean, school district shopping, is a very popular activity.
Oh, for sure. And now, I mean, especially in Arcadia,
Yeah.
I mean, they make you jump through hoops, balance a ball on your nose. You have to do 101 things to get your child into school.
Yeah,
They want
right.
to come out and know that you actually live there. They want to know that you're not living with relatives. I mean, they're very, very strict because so many people move into the districts for the better education.
Right.
Yeah, and the ones that stand out to me are like Temple City, Arcadia, San Marino. You hear that a lot, right? Like people have solely come to the community just for the
They really
education. Yeah. So is that why you came to Temple City?
That was the first reason. I've heard of it. I knew it was a tiny little town. I didn't know much about it. I know it was still, 10, 15 minutes away from LA, so I wasn't too far away from where I came from. And like I said, once I got there, it was just for the first maybe about 6 months, I couldn't sleep at night because it was too quiet.
Mm.
Wow.
And you can hear crickets. And I was used to hearing gunshots and not crickets or not silence. So it took me a while to adjust. I mean, it was, again, night and day. It was a really great move. Best move I could have done for my children.
Yeah, it sounds like it made a lot of sense.
It did. It really did.
So part of this show is to go in depth into a conversation on who the people are, right? And the background certainly makes up a lot of who our guests are. You mentioned where you grew up is like the gunshots and all that, but can you tell us a little bit more? Like what was that like to grow up in that sort of environment, and how did you make it out of there?
It was normal. I know it sounds weird now, but I mean, it was normal. I lost a lot of friends through junior high and high school because of gun violence and gangs and being at the wrong place at the wrong time and things like that. It was just normal. I didn't start to realize, this wasn't normal until I had my own children. And then I started to see that I wanted better for them. I think that I did very well considering where I came from. Sometimes my grammar isn't that great, and I blame LA Unified for that. But it was normal for me. Like I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but.
So then you saw something different. So how did you, it was after you had kids, and did you start to raise them in this other environment?
I did start to raise them in the other environment, and I had my children young, so we grew up together. So the experience that I had with them was always wanting to do better, but at the same time, we grew up together. I have a 7-year-old now, and it's totally different experience from when I had my first kids. Now I'm old and more patient, but back then, we grew up together.
So that kind of relationship with your kids was not just mother-child, but sort of more equal?
You talk to my daughter, she'll tell you that I'm her best friend. I mean, my adult children have gone through the struggles and everything that I went through, and I think it's made them better people, having to experience that. My son has seen a lot where he makes better choices, I feel, from seeing the things that we saw in LA, from, going into a better area. He carried that with him. He was a little bit old. He was older than my daughter. He was about 5 at the time. And so I can see it. He won't tell you, but I can kind of see that almost chip on his shoulder to where it changed him and made him a better person. And I think a more responsible person.
So you, during this time, were you working?
I was working. I've always been working. I've been working since I was like 13.
And in marketing?
No, I've had lots of crappy jobs. I've done sales. I've worked for, I think what was my first job? My first job was like at a kiosk in a mall, selling stuff. I was like 13. They paid me cash. It was great. I was able to sell. I naturally have that ability. And I didn't realize it back then. You work, you need money, you need to pay the bills, you need to feed the kids, you need to do everything you need to do. I worked a lot of retail jobs. My first office job was at a pest control company. And it was literally one of the worst jobs I've ever had in my life. The owner never remembered my name. He would have referred to me as, "Hey girl, go get my coffee."
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been struggles, but everything got me to where I am today.
I completely understand what it's like to feel like everything is just normal as you're growing up in it. And then when you look back, you're like, wow, that was pretty messed up, right? Do you feel that way about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
Because I know the area that you're referring to, and before the show started, I said Los Avenidos. So it's an area, but it's also a gang there, right? And the LA, the Dodger hat, a lot of them, I understand wear the Dodger hat.
Especially in the 90s, it was a very dangerous place to be. There was a killing of a little girl, maybe like 20 years ago. And I mean, from there, I mean, they just started cracking down on things started changing, and it also brought light to the area of how bad it was. Because again, it wasn't somewhere that you'd want to walk down the street with your children. It wasn't somewhere you would bother going out at night, because only bad things happen at night. No good ever comes out of anything at night. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw attention for the listener who maybe doesn't know that area and sort of is not getting a full idea of how bad that area could be in some time, especially in the 90s. Like, that was a really rough area to be.
It was a really, really tough area to be. And you can drive down the streets now, and it's so gentrified that it's ridiculous. I can't even afford to buy a house in Highland Park anymore, because I mean, the price, everything is just, it's so different. My mom grew up in Highland Park as well, and she moved to Arizona about 8 years ago. And so she still comes down to visit, and she doesn't even recognize the town anymore. Like, this is not where she grew up, which is a great thing. But I mean, then you have a whole bunch of other issues. The people that have lived there forever can't afford to live there anymore, and all these other things come into play. But it was not nice in the 90s. It was very scary.
Part of the thing that I tell potential guests before they come on about the show is that this is a chance for you to also cement and document your own life experience for people that you may not have that time to get to. Certainly, prospective business contacts, but even family members who maybe don't know your story and the things that you've gone through and experienced. You mentioned this boss that, treated you, it sounds really poorly. Like, how did you deal with that? And what did you learn from that?
I learned I did not want to work there. No, I mean, but I learned a lot. So like, I mean, he was a terrible human, and I don't know what happened to him, and hope. Did
you ever say anything to him? Did you ever say, my name is Ryan?
No, I was like 18 or 19 at the time. So I was young, and I was, this old man is just, so you're like, okay, you just kind of got him his coffee and then just went back and did your job. I lasted there about a year. And then I racked up the experience, and then I went to a larger pest control company, and I went to work for Stanley Pest Control. And then I racked up some more experience, and then I took my knowledge and went to Western Exterminator. And here's a fun fact about me. I've loved sales since I was a kid. It comes natural to me. So when I started working at Western, I was in the office, and I would take calls, and I would schedule, termite inspections and type up reports and do all that fun stuff. And then one day I went into my boss's office, and I was like, Dave, I want to go out into the field. And he was like, Blondie, go sit down. You can't wear your heels and those nails in the field. Are you crazy? Go sit down, Blondie. And he kind of just laughed it off. And I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, if these guys could do it, why can't I? And he was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, it's going to take work. I'm like, I'm used to working, I'm up for the challenge. Let's do it. So he's like, okay, I'll set you up with a ride along with one of the supervisors. And I went out, and I'm a really tall 5'1", and every guy in the field, they're all at least 6 foot. So there's all these big, tall guys, and then here comes me in a children's-sized boot and my little coveralls, and I went out, and it was fun. I was like, wait, I can do this. I'm selling in the field. I'm meeting with people. I'm, meeting the clients and stuff that I'm servicing their house. I can do it. And he was like, okay, well, you have to, you have to take tests. You have to do this. And so I did. I got my applicator's license. So then I can apply chemical in the state of California. And then from there, I got my branch 2, which allowed me to identify pests and do all kinds of stuff. And I loved it. I mean, I loved it.
Because you were out selling? Is that what you were doing?
I was out selling. I was meeting with, I would come to your home, and, we're talking. And
Cold calls?
Cold calls, going door to door. Or people would, see me and flag me down like, hey, I have this problem. And, yeah, I can handle this for you. And it was just a really fun experience.
So you really have to be aggressive.
Yeah.
But you have to know your product.
You got to know your stuff.
Yeah.
You got to know your stuff. And I had been in the industry now for a few years that I was like, this is pretty cool, and the money was great, doing outside sales compared to sitting inside the office. And
So how long did you do that?
a couple years. I had developed a weird cough that kind of scared me, and the fact that I was working with chemicals and all that stuff. So I was like, now I'm starting to see these old men that have been doing it for many years, and they're in their 60s, and they're going, and things like that, and the aging. So I was like, maybe this, kind of isn't the industry for me, but I got the experience.
How did you move to something else?
Let's see, what did I do from there? I went back into indoor sales, and then just by a random, I don't even remember exactly how, but I got an interview for a freelancing position for an ad agency. And so I was up for the challenge, let me see what it's about. So I went and I interviewed, and they hired me. So I was just freelancing. I wasn't a permanent employee. After about 4 weeks, the VP called me to his office, sat me down, and was like, hey, we've really had our eye on you, and you're killing it. Like, I have employees here that have been doing this for years and years.
What were you doing?
I was doing local buying.
Okay.
So anything that you saw, the client at the time was Walt Disney Pictures. So if you saw a commercial on channel 2, 4, 7, 11, or 13, I was the one that got it there. So I got the experience working at an ad agency. I mean, I was working with one of the best and biggest clients in the world. I mean, it's Disney,
Right.
It's a monster. And I made some really good, relationships there, and I learned a lot. And mind you, I didn't go to school for marketing or, anything in that area. And so the VP was like, look, I'm going to hire you, but you're the only one here without a college degree. You don't say nothing, and I won't say nothing, and I'll teach you everything that you need to know. And I was like, okay, I mean, this is, basically getting a free education and getting paid while I'm doing it. So I did it for about 10 years. It was one of the largest agencies. I mean, they're highly awarded. I mean, still to this day, they're one of the bigger agencies. And from there, I started working in another agency. And after I left there, I really wanted to kind of pursue more of the sales, because I still had that. I just love sales. I mean, when I can't close something, or, whatever it may be, it hurts. Like I take a loss, I feel it. And so I really wanted to kind of shift back to stay in the industry, but to shift to the sales aspect. So I was offered a position for NBC Universal, selling their VIP product. And again, loved it. I mean, I was doing everything that I loved. I was there for about 2 years, I believe. And from there, I was offered a position at a law firm, which is totally not what I had been doing. But because I feel like I'm a man of many hats, I want to do everything. Like, I want to learn everything. I want to do everything. I may suck at it, but I want to try it, why not? So I sat down with the attorney, and he hired me on the spot. And I was like super excited. And he was like, you're the most excited employee I've ever hired. You're not going to be a lawyer, right? And I started laughing. I was like, no, I know, but I play one all the time. So he was like, well, I need help with my sales. You have the sales background. It's clearly not what you were doing before, but, let's see what we can do. So I was working there for close to a decade. And I loved it, everything that I was doing.
And what did you do?
So I started out running the intake department, which would be the sales team. And then by the time I left, I was operations management, and I was handling the marketing. We had grown from when I started with the company. There were about 11 or 12 of us total, including the 2 partners. And within that first 2 years, with me running this intake team and doing the sales, we grew from 12 employees to 50 employees. We got into a new office, and then still had to expand 1 year later because there wasn't enough room, because we were doing so well. So, me taking all this experience and everything that I've kind of built up to do, it got to a point, and I'm like, we need to start marketing. And he was just like, he was very, very hesitant. We did everything on a lead generation was how we established everything. We did shared leads. So somebody went online and filled out some information, like, I was in an auto accident, I need to speak with an attorney. Their information was going to 5 other attorneys. So I was fast on the phone, good on the phone. While their other line is blowing up with other attorneys calling, I'm keeping them on the phone. I mean, I'm really, really good at it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. Like, that was the thing. Like, I really enjoyed it. Like, again, like, I mean, if there were ever like, oh, well, you know what, my husband decided we don't need an attorney. Okay. Just taking the loss, it hurts. You want every win. So I kept, we need to do our own marketing, and then we own it. Then, we're not competing with anybody. Like, we're owning it. At this point, we have budget. Like, clearly we've grown. So he was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I started working on a campaign. I started doing radio and billboards, and then we shifted into TV, and I kicked butt. Like, literally, like, we went into a small market, and I would drive up there and I would meet the people. And because not every market's the same. I mean, not everywhere is LA. LA is so saturated. You drive down the street, you see so many billboards. And when you go into these smaller markets, there's like 1 billboard per 5 miles, and the people are very local and they only want local. So, I mean, I'm eating lunch at the local spots and talking to the waiter and going like, hey, like, if you were in an auto accident and you needed an attorney, how would you find one? And they're, telling me, well, at first I'd call my mom, or, somebody that I know, I'm going to get a referral from them, somebody local. And I kept hearing that. I'd go to the Starbucks and pick up conversations with people, just random strangers, just, kind of picking their brains for the insight, because not every market is like Los Angeles. So we were killing it. And so at that point I was like, okay, if I'm doing this for one client, I can do this on a bigger scale and not just be so confined to one market. I can go into different industries, and the hamster on the wheel just started moving, and I started coming up with all of these ideas and these thoughts that I wanted to execute. I was still a little bit hesitant. Probably took me about a good year to finally get the courage to be like, sink or swim, we got to do this. I think one of the big turning points was for me, I lost my grandfather, and I'm trying not to, I won't cry, but biggest influence on me, hands down. I mean, the best man you've ever met. Just a good human, just an amazing man.
When was that? How long ago?
That was at the beginning of 2020, right before pandemic. He was 95. He was amazing. And a few months later, I then lost my grandmother, not the one married to him, but my grandfather was my dad's dad, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, had passed away in the same year, about 6 months apart. Grandpa was 95 when he passed away. My grandmother was 92. They got crazy long genes. I mean, my grandmother, that was married to my grandfather. She's still alive. She's 92, still getting into trouble, doing things that she's not supposed to be doing. We have Aunt Bertha, who's my grandma's sister, who's 98, and she's been trying to die for like the last 10 years, but she ain't going anywhere. But after losing my grandfather, it was like I've never experienced that type of loss before. I mean, I've lost friends, but like, it was a hard one. It was really, really, really hard.
And you're close to your family.
I'm very close to my family.
Yeah.
I have an amazing family on both sides, mothers and dads, very supportive. So losing my grandfather, he was a man who would eat pie for breakfast. If he wanted pie, he ate pie. He was a jeweler, and he owned his own shop out in Gardena. And some days he would just close the shop and go to Santa Anita racetrack because that's where he wanted to be. So he lived his life happy. I never saw the man in a bad mood. He was never grouchy. He was always smiling. There was never, in my eyes, the man never had a bad day. And so knowing and, going through pictures and all of these things on how he lived his life, it was really kind of a turning point to me where I was like, why am I selling myself short? If Grandpa can eat pie and go to the racetrack, and he at 87, he was at Santa Anita Racetrack, and he collapsed. He had a, not a cyst, tumor resting on his spinal cord and caused him to collapse. They took him to, what is it, Methodist? Is that the one?
Arcadia Methodist.
Arcadia Methodist. That's when he was diagnosed with cancer. He had bone cancer, stage 4. And so he was hospitalized. He was at Kaiser Sunset. They were like, well, we could remove the tumor. It's very dangerous. You know, he's an old guy. And my grandpa was like, I'll be just fine. Get me some See's candy and let's do this. And so he did. And he made it through the surgery. He went through therapy, learned how to walk again. I mean, for being an old guy at 87 and, you know, going through all this, and it wasn't even the cancer that killed him. It was just age, you know? And I mean, he had such a positive outlook. He was so happy. Like, I would be disrespecting him if I didn't make any moves. I kind of felt like he would have made a move. Like, why am I being such a chicken? You know?
So what move did you make?
So I decided, I had created my 9-to-5, and I purchased the LLC, and I started, you know, doing my research and doing as much as I possibly could. And I had enough money in the bank to where I was comfortable, you know, and it was kind of a sink or swim moment. So one morning I didn't plan on it, but I got up in the morning and I was like, today's my last day. I have to do this. I have to do it for me. You know, I have to do it. So I went into the office and I waited for my boss, the attorney, to come in. And then I was like, we need to talk. And he was jaw on the floor, like, what?
Well, it was completely unexpected,
yeah, it was
right?
definitely unexpected.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, like, you know, I love you. I mean, you guys have been family. You've always treated me very well. But this is something I have to do for myself. So yeah, so I was, you know, I can give you a notice, and he was just like, you sure you know what you're doing? And I was like, yeah. And he's probably gonna kill me if he hears this, but he cried. And so I was like, okay. So he was like, can you close my door when you leave? And I was like, okay. So I went out, and then I went in to say something stupid just to kind of like lighten the mood. I don't know, I cracked a joke. I don't know exactly what I said, but I opened the door and I said something stupid, and he looked at me and he was crying. And then I was like, oh my God. So I was like, I mean, in my head, I was like, it's gonna be okay, like, you know. So I was like, do you need a hug? And he's like, I don't need a hug, get out of my office. I was like, okay. Like, so everybody, like as I'm like walking out, everybody's just like, Ryan's leaving? Like, we thought she would be here until she dies, you know. I was so well invested, and I mean, I was a major player in the office and the building, from the structure, from everything. Like, I was just there from the beginning. So everybody was like, but I did it. Granted, I will also say that, like, I mean, in the last 3 years that I was there, I was always getting job offers. Competitors knew what I was doing for my boss and how well everything was going. So, I mean, I had an attorney who I kept ignoring, and he Facebook messaged my son, was like, hey, bud, I'm really trying to get a hold of your mom. Can you please ask her to give me a call? I have an amazing job offer for her, lots of money, da-da-da. And I was like, why are you harassing my kid? You know, like, wow. You psycho. So, I mean, I knew that I know that I have that, like, comfort where if it didn't work out, I can easily go anywhere I wanted. So that being said, I also now have this reputation throughout the industry that all these people do want to work with me. So it also helped the fact that, you know, if I come knocking on your door, they already know who I am. Especially, I mean, there's a lot of PI lawyers. There's a Persian community, you know, all the Persian Jews, they're all attorneys, and they all sit and have dinner together and talk about how successful they are and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they all know each other. So they're all very familiar with who I am. So I can walk in the door and I can easily get a conversation with some of these attorneys that nobody else would be able to, because I have that reputation. So that helped. And I mean, knowing that, like, I mean, at this point, I left the office at 9:15. It took me about 30, 40 minutes to get home. I had already gotten 2 calls. One of them was from an office saying, oh, my boss would really like to meet with you, blah, 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 blah. And then another was like, you left? Like, I mean, it just kind of like spread like wildfire. So like, I was like, okay. And it just so happened that when I left and was ready to start doing things, I also got another job offer from another office. And they were like, you know, can you come in? We want to hire you internally. And I was like, this is against everything that I just did, you know, like, so I'm like, well, look, if it's on my terms where, you know, I will work for you, but just know that I am working my other stuff on the side. I won't do anything that's a conflict, but this is where I'm going. So I built up that law firm for a few months, and I couldn't stay internally anymore. Like, I needed to get out of the cage and just continue to pursue what I've been doing. I've been very lucky, very fortunate. I've partnered with like all of the right people. I mean, I'm vetting out people in the industry. I'm not trying to do everything on my own. I know that that's not the move. You know, if I have strengths and I have weaknesses.
And you're very enthusiastic about what you do, and you've got that infectious enthusiasm.
I love what I do.
So your company is 9to5 Marketing, is that the name?
Yes, that's correct.
And you specialize in attorney, or do you do other areas?
I do other areas. I do have the niche in the legal. I mean, I think it's from doing sales for so long internally and doing operations management, understanding, just having that inside niche, it helps me. So I have clients that are attorneys, and I also have a couple clients that are in the food and beverage industry. I even have a kombucha drink, which is so weird, but I mean, they have a really cool story. And I mean, I'm also very selective with who I work with. Like, if you were to call me today and I already kind of know you have a reputation, I mean, there's big attorneys in the industry that I refuse to work with, just because I personally enjoy working with like the smaller guy and watching them grow, as opposed to, you know, me going and trying to work on Walt Disney Pictures or Jacoby and Myers, or, you know what I mean, where there are these massive mills. I've always been a fan of the underdog. And if I can see, you know, that there's this, and I know that there's still room for growth, that's what inspires me. And that's where I go. Like, that's seeing your client, like, example, I have one of the clients that's currently on the bus. Am I allowed to like say names? So it's called Every Table, which is a food service that goes after, it's basically in the poor neighborhoods where, you know, they're used to eating McDonald's and these types of foods. They're actually giving a healthy option, prepared meals for a lower price tag. So, I mean, they're like in Baldwin Park and South LA and all of these areas where they really don't have healthy options. And again, you're only paying like $8 for a full meal. You can go into their restaurants and you can order, and they can heat up and you can eat there, or you can order them to go, or you can order them online. And just example, I mean, they were this pretty small, you know, with a great idea. And in the first month of them going on buses, they were like, our sales are up 11%. And that wasn't even a full 30 days of being out there. So it's like,
so that's exciting, isn't it?
That's so exciting to me, you know, like I like seeing that, like little thing to the big thing.
Yeah. No, I understand. You want to grow something. You want to see it grow.
And you get to see it. Yeah. So it's not just like working on a mill where it's, you know, you're just kind of just going with the flow and doing I'm putting in the work, and then I'm seeing my hard work. Like,
yeah, you work hard at it, don't you?
I do.
I mean, you're just right in it.
I'm in it. I don't know how I'm doing it, but I mean, I'm getting it done. I mean, on top of running my company, I'm a mother, I'm a homeschool teacher, I'm doing a whole bunch of other things. So it's really great. It's really, really great.
Your company is 9to5 Marketing. We had a previous guest who shared an interesting story on the background of that name. So can you share with us? We sort of got into it before the show, but how did you come up with that name?
My idol, my role model is Dolly Parton. I think she's an amazing human. I mean, she has this imagination library. If you've ever seen her in concert and all of her stories, and, you know, she grew up with nothing. I think she was like one of 12 kids. Like, in one of her, like at the concert, she was like, you know, I had 11 or 12 siblings, and she was like, the problem was Papa couldn't keep his hands off of Mama. You know, like, I mean, but they grew up in a 1-bedroom home, and mean, she came from nothing. And just through her concert, she'll sing a song and then she explains it. And so you get, like, she walks you through her childhood and her adulthood and all of these things that made her who she is. And I just admire her. I've always been like intrigued by her hair and her makeup and her chest and her, you know what I mean? Like all of these things that make her the idol. But hearing her stories and going to her, it was literally when I went to her concert and her explaining her stories that I was like, my God, I love this woman.
She is remarkable if you stop to think about it. And I never have really stopped to think about it. But I mean, think how she crossed into, you know, pop culture. You know, she started in country and then became an actress and created Dolly World. Is that the name of it? Yeah, Dolly World.
On my bucket list. Yes,
yeah.
I had actually planned out a trip right before COVID happened. So I'm waiting for everything to kind of get back to normal, and that's on my to-do. And I hear that every year at opening day, she's there. So obviously that's when I want to be there.
Where is that?
Like Pigeon Forge or something like that, Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee.
Yeah, it's like in a tiny little town, but yeah. I think it would be fun.
Well, I remember her from the 70s when she first sort of hit the public eye, I guess, in like the mid 70s.
Yeah, she's been around forever. I mean, but she's just like amazing. I mean, I think she was just in, they were trying to give her an award. It was like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something. And she was like, no, give it to somebody else that deserves it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we should have shrines of you everywhere. You deserve it. But she's very humble, and a very smart woman, you know, like for her to get so far and, you know, it's a man's world. Like no matter which way you look at it, you know, it's harder for a female. It's always harder. I mean, even in personal, like I have a client, and one time at the beginning, before we got very comfortable with each other, he's like, well, you come from money. And I was like, I don't come from money. And he was like, oh, well, your husband's rich. Not married, sir. Like, you know, but they
just assumed that somehow you had some advantage that
and it's like
they couldn't give you credit for what you really were.
Yeah, and it's like I've busted my butt. I've worked very, very hard for where I'm at, and at this point I'm working hard and I'm enjoying it. So it's like a bonus.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
I brought my necklace, which I have been wearing every day for the last 29 and a half years. This was a gift from my grandfather when I graduated or culmination from the 6th grade, and I've been wearing it ever since.
Oh, since 6th grade.
It'll be 30
every
years.
day.
Every day. It'll be 30 years next June.
Wow.
So, I mean, I know you had asked me to bring something. And I was like, what am I going to bring? Like, because I'm not a sentimentally person. I'm more of a, like, everything must go. I'm always cleaning the house, throwing everything away, like, you know. But I was like,
very practical.
Yeah, I got out the shower last week and I put it on and I was like, holy cow, like, how long have I been? And I was like doing the math and I was like, holy cow, 29 years. So it's a part of me. It's definitely a part of me.
Wow.
And it was a gift from my grandfather.
What does it have your name?
It just has my name, Ryan.
So for the listener, it's like it's a gold chain and it's a gold medallion with your name in cursive.
My grandfather made it.
And what's
he was a jeweler. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so my grandfather made it, gifted it to me. I mean, it's been a part of me. Through every phase in my life, it's been with me.
It's the one constant.
Through the struggle, through the good times, the bad times, the everything, like, it's always been the same. Always. And it's always been a part of me, and it's always been on me.
Is there a background story to your name?
My mom gave me a boy's name. My mom was the one that named me. If my dad would have named me, my name would have been Carrera, after a Porsche, because my dad loves cars. So I think mom winning that one was a good one. But I am given a lot of stuff, especially like when I call the bank and they're like, well, you need to speak with Mr. Christiansen. And I'm like,
Is Ryan a boy's name, or is it one that is both?
I think it's unisex, but I mean, anybody else would tell you different. I went to high school in Eagle Rock where it was a lot of Filipinos, and there are a lot of Filipino boys named Ryan. So in every class, I must have had at least like 2 boys named Ryan in the class. So I think I have met one other female Ryan, but she spelt it different. Another fun fact is I named my son Ryan.
Oh, wow.
So my youngest, his name is actually Ryan Christiansen. I'm Ryan Nicole Christiansen. He's Ryan Nicholas Christiansen.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Well, another thing I'm curious about is the listener can't see, but is you have some tattoos on your forearm.
I do. I have
What's the story behind those?
Quite a lot of tattoos, actually. Okay. But the ones on my arm, I have this angel who is my guardian angel, who, in my eyes, it's my great-grandmother. She passed away when I was about 5, and I've just been through a lot of things in life where I'm like, how did I get through that? And I give her credit for it. She has to be the one watching over me. So this is kind of just for my grandmother. Or
How long have you had it?
Oh, a long time. Maybe like 15 years. It's been a while. And then I have 3 roses on my arm, which are symbolic to, I have 3 sisters. So I have 3 roses and my 3 sisters. And then I have Patrick and Stacy, which are my mother and my father. So this is kind of just like family stuff. On my wrist, it says God Only Knows, which is a reference to my grandfather. When he was in the hospital, when all the tumor stuff and all that was going on, where the doctors were like, it's really not safe, you're old, all these complications and stuff could happen. He just kept saying, God only knows, which he got from back when he was in the war. He had gotten a really bad bacteria or some type of infection in his ears. And so he was hospitalized, and he said in the hospital there was a poster, and it said, God only knows. And he just always kept that with him. Like you would have talked to him, he'd be like, I thought I was dead. Like, I thought that was the end of me. He was young, in his 20s, and he was like, I thought that was it. He's like, I didn't think I would survive that, and I did. And he's always carried the God only knows. So I just felt it was right to add that on me, to just always, to be a reminder to myself as well.
That's also the name of a Beach Boys song.
Is it?
Have you ever heard it?
I have not.
Oh, one of the most beautiful songs, I think, of the pop era.
Can you sing it?
I can't sing. No, that's a big mistake right there. But listen. Last night I was driving for a couple hours, and I listened to that song at least 10 times in a row.
Really?
Yeah, the Beach Boys. God Only Knows. It's definitely. It was anyway. Now we're starting to talk about me, so I better stop. But it was a song that was so great when it came out in '66, I think. It influenced the Beatles to create an album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which was sort of Is that the album that has, I want to say it's called In My Life? Or it doesn't. That's not on that album.
Is that the name of that song?
Yeah, In My Life.
That is such a beautiful Beatles song. I can't cry with. Listen to it without crying. It's such.
But you see, at that time, so it's interesting you mentioned that. This was God Only Knows and In My Life. These were songs that were influenced. So the Beatles and Beach Boys were influencing each other.
That's very cool.
And yeah, it just drove them to these creative highs that, I don't know, I don't think anybody has ever reached, not even Dolly Parton. But,
hey.
but anyway, I don't know how we got off on the Beatles and the Beach Boys, but
yeah, so that's my tattoos. I have plenty of work that I've gotten here in the San Gabriel Valley. I have 2 tattoo artists. One is Pete Castro over at Shogun Tattoo in Pasadena, and the other is Carlos over at Cryptic Tattoo and at Azusa. I guess Azusa is still San Gabriel Valley, right?
Yeah.
So I have my leg, I have my back, I have my stomach, I have my sides. I have quite a lot of tattoos.
Are you addicted to it?
I was. And one of the weird things is I've had all these tattoos for so long, and I know now it's more accepted. Everybody has tattoos everywhere, it's not as it was before, but I'm still very traditional type that literally, like when I was at Universal, nobody even knew I had tattoos. I was always covered, and I just was kind of brought up that way. It wasn't the way it is now. It wasn't like that before. So I've always hid my tattoos. They were always for me to see, or, on a regular, at my house, or they weren't exposed to the public. And I think now I've gotten more comfortable and have accepted, this is this is who I am, and this is my art, and it's all me. So I think that, I mean, that's also been a little obstacle and stuff that I've seen myself grow.
Well, for someone who says that they're not sentimental, your tattoos have a lot of like really deep meaning
So, yeah.
to them. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. And I want to get into, from right now, the show, your trajectory of, coming out of Highland Park to Temple City seems to be like this, but I'm curious if there's any difficulties or struggles that you hit along the way. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. To thank our sponsor, Warmouth Law. At Warmouth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. They've been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them today at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast. All right, we're back with Ryan. Ryan, before the break, we were talking about tattoos and music, and I think I remember this song. Have you seen the movie Love Actually? It's based around
like a
Christmas.
chick flick, right?
It would be described that way, yeah.
I'm not a chick flick girl.
Have you seen that movie? No? Okay.
I've heard of it. Didn't see it.
It's a Christmas movie. It's like I guess it would be described as a chick flick movie, but there's like 4 different stories in there. Anyway, the song is, I think, in that movie, so I'll look it up. I think I know that song.
In My Life? Or
God Only Knows.
Oh, really?
It repeats itself like multiple times, right? God Only Knows.
Yeah. It's like just repeating. It's like a.
When I get to the car, I'll add it to the iPod.
Yeah, listen to it. I mean, it's just one of the most incredible. Look at the YouTube making of that song. You can go onto YouTube and the Beach Boys in the studio making that song, and all the various instruments that were used. Is just a beautiful song.
I'll check it out.
Beautiful arrangement.
So from right now, the listener's like, wow, your life and your career was just sort of on this upward trajectory and never had any difficulty. But did you encounter any difficulties, either like aside from the boss who didn't remember your name and deciding to leave the law firm? Like how's that journey been for you? Were there any struggles that you had?
Every day there's struggles. I mean, every day there's struggles. There's always something. I've just kind of learned to not let it take over me. I mean, there's struggles every day. I mean, I've been blessed and I'm lucky enough that my business has been successful and I don't hit many walls when it comes to there, but I'm also juggling a lot. I mean, people don't know that. They know I'm a mother, they know I have 3 kids, but they don't know that I'm also full-time homeschooling my child, which is a struggle. I am not a teacher. I'm doing my best.
Your child is 7.
He is 7, yeah. But with COVID and everything, I didn't have the intentions of homeschooling him. He was born premature. I gave birth at 28 weeks. So I had a little 2-pound, 4-ounce baby.
Wow.
We lived in the NICU for 93 days over at Glendale Adventist, and he came home on oxygen, and he has a lung condition. And so when COVID hit, I mean, nobody had any idea of what was going on. And so the last thing that I wanted to do is have my child, who has a respiratory condition, catch a virus that can be deadly. So, I mean, everything shifted. People were, everybody was kind of doing online, and they did all that. And maybe about last year, the beginning of last year, I was going to put him into school, and I had enrolled him into Holly Avenue in Arcadia. And day 2, I get an email saying that my child has been exposed, and I'm like, okay, I can't, how can you function knowing, I mean, if your child is sick or can possibly, it's a distraction from everything. So it just made more sense for me to continue to homeschool him, and I have a tutor that helps because God knows I need the help. But yeah, so there's a giant struggle. But
Russell is very familiar with homeschooling, doing it himself with his children.
Can I drop my son off at your house?
That'd be a long drive. But Tori is one of 6, and their mom has homeschooled them all.
Really?
Yeah. And I think only one is left to go to college, or one more is left to go to college. But she was on this show, and she discussed,
I think I listened to her podcast when I was going through them.
It's quite a.
It's hard. I mean, it's the hardest job. It really, really is. Teachers do not get enough credit for what they do.
Oh no, they don't.
They do not. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, it's rewarding. And I mean, with so many scary things going on, and it's just
and your thought is that you would continue through graduation?
I think I'm going to continue. I think I'm going to continue. This year, it was like at the end of last year, I was like, oh my God, I can't handle this. He's got to go back to school. And then as we're getting closer, I'm like, well, you know, so we're fine. You know, we're going to push through, and we'll
you adjust to it and work it into your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's been one struggle. I won't say that I've had a lot of struggles as far as like jobs and, you know, my job that I'm currently doing, and, you know, running a company. I mean, it's stressful. Don't get me wrong. My eye has been twitching for the last 6 months. The doctor's like, oh, it's lack of sleep and a little stress. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's definitely not easy, but it's at the same time, it's just so rewarding. You know, I mean, you start a campaign, and recently I just started a campaign, and like the days leading up, you just get so nervous, and you're like, did I do everything right? You know, you start overthinking and doing everything, but then you're like, day one, the phones are ringing, and day two, the phones are still ringing, and the cases are like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so like, yes, like, you know, I did that, and I know what I'm doing. Like, it's a reassurance, and it's a great feeling. It's a really great feeling.
Might as well disclose that I own a law firm, and she is doing a campaign for our law firm. So, you know, I should disclose that, you know.
But I mean, it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding. You know, it's funny. I have a client, and I was speaking with somebody else, and recently Disney, I guess it's Disney or Marvel, they have She-Hulk billboards. Have you seen those?
No.
So I guess it's like, I think it's on Disney Plus, or it's something, and it's the Hulk, but it's a female. I don't know the whole backstory, but basically she did all these like attorney ads, and she's on the back of the buses, and she's on bus benches, and somebody called me and was like, there's another attorney on these boards, and they stole your client's color palette, and da-da-da-da-da, and I was like, the heck? So comes out that it's Disney, and they're just promoting their new picture, but they're using my client's colors, and they're going on the buses too. So I was like, but it was like the fact that they called me and they recognized that those are my client's colors. You know what I mean? Those are our branding colors, and you knew that because of the, you know what I mean?
Because of what you did.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, they don't know any better, but me, I'm going like, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, I did that.
Oh, yeah. Just last week we had Brandon on our show, Brandon Rogers. And if you remember, he talked about, he was one who created my billboards.
Okay.
And every time he sees one still, which you can't because there aren't any anymore, but he would get so proud. And this is a guy who has created his own career. And, you know, like I'm nothing in his life, but he still gets proud when he sees it's the weirdest thing. The first thing he created.
Because I'm the same way. Like I create these campaigns, and I do this, and I get all this out there, and I'm pushing so hard for my clients, and I'm so proud when it's working and this is going up. But for myself, I'm the last person to do anything for myself. You know what I mean? Like you would think, like, I mean, there's so many other people, and maybe that's the difference. You know, they're too busy working on themselves to make this image, but I'm putting it into my clients, because when they're happy, I'm happy. When I see it growing, like, it's just, we're growing together. You know, like, I mean, I get involved with my current clients. It's a partnership, and it's a relationship, and it's long-term. And, you know, there's so many other agencies that will just come in like, oh, you know, I can buy your spots, and I can get a cheaper rate, and I can do this. But they don't get that passion that they get with me. You know what I mean? Because I love seeing that grow. It just,
that's
I just
your thing.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've made it this far in this episode, I'm sure you can just feel the energy coming off of her. It's the positivity is, you know, just really present in you.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see what you have to share with the listeners about your favorite things in the San Gabriel Valley, because I'm sure that energy is going to translate into that as well. So let's get into that.
All right.
Okay, Ryan, let's talk about things you like in the valley. San Gabriel Valley.
Number one by far is Santa Anita Racetrack.
Wow.
I love that place. That place is a second home to me. My grandfather started taking me when I was little. And he would say, okay, honey, which pony do you want to pick? And I would look through the little thing and I'd be like, I want this one. And I would win. And this was great, So, I remember the first time, I was probably 5, but I remember it. And I hit. And my horse won $65.
Oh, wow.
And I was so excited. He's like, oh, I'm going to put it in your savings account. And I was I told everybody. I was so excited. But I love that place. When it opened, I cannot remember the year that it opened, but my grandfather sold newspapers there on opening day. He grew up in Pasadena, and he was a huge part of the San Gabriel Valley, and it's where he was born and raised, and he was a Pasadena boy. A fun fact about him, too, he was also really good friends with Jackie Robinson. And my grandpa would tell you, who
Did they go to high school together?
They went to school together, and my grandfather could actually outrun him.
Wow.
And it was funny. My grandpa, he'd always tell me the stories, and he'd always whatever. And so right now, after he passed, we have half of his ashes are at the cemetery over in West LA, the Veterans Memorial or whatever. And where they placed him, they were supposed to place him over here with everybody else, and there was, I don't know exactly what happened, but they were like, well, we're sorry, we can't give you this spot, but we're putting you in the newer, blah, blah, blah. So he's in there, and his view faces the Jackie Robinson Memorial Field.
Wow.
So I was like, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah,
so at UCLA.
Yeah, so it's just, it's weird.
He's watching over his old friend.
He's definitely, but Santa Anita Racetrack, I've
wow,
grown up there.
Do you go and you love to place bets?
Heck yeah.
Oh yeah, and
Heck yeah.
And when was the last time you were there?
A couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
So you do go? Wow.
I do
Who
go.
are some of the great horses you've seen?
What's his name?
John
Valenzuela.
Henry, or the horses. Oh,
I don't know the
famous
horses' names.
Oh, but the jockeys.
I know the jockeys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Smith.
And there's no rhyme or reason to my betting. I'm like, oh, this horse is orange.
Oh, you do that. Okay.
Yeah. I have a friend who actually works for Santa Anita, and he'll be like, okay, let me, I'm like, okay, but I'm still going to pick this one. When my grandfather's 88th birthday, I was in charge of getting him to my aunt's house in La Crescenta for his party, and everybody was already there. So I show up to pick up Grandpa, and I'm like, you want to stop by the track first? And he was like, yes. So we stopped at the track, and we're like, we're going to place one bet, and we got to get out of here. Grandma's going to kill us. So we placed a bet. It was on Mr. Sexy. That was the name of the horse. And I was like, oh yeah, he's going to win, So I put $10 down or whatever. He was a long shot. We placed our bet, and my grandpa's like, oh, it's fine. He would any excuse to come back the next day. So he'd place a bet, and he'd be like, oh, I'll check on the winner tomorrow. An excuse for him to go. So we left, and I had messaged my friend. I'm like, hey, I bet on this horse. Let me know who wins the next race. And he was like, hey, number blah, 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 one. I was like, so me and Grandpa hit the long shot, and we made $200 on this horse. Yeah. But it's just good energy there. It's so old. They have great hot dogs. I'm a giant fan of hot dogs.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah. Especially you find a bacon wrapped hot dog in LA.
All
about it.
Wow.
But it is. And they have a lot of cool events there now, the 626 market. So if you love eating, definitely love going there. Little carnivals, food things.
It's a shame that it just doesn't draw the crowds that it used to.
Yeah.
It would be sold out every day, 50,000 people or whatever. And now.
Yeah, now it's pretty empty, but it's still, it's still home.
Yeah.
It's home. That's my number one place, and it's Santa Anita Racetrack.
Cool. What's a second?
Second, maybe the Rose Bowl. I know that sounds kind of, and it's it's the Rose Bowl, but I grew up always going there for 4th of July. Dad would take for the fireworks. Either they'd have concerts going on, and my mom would always win tickets on the radio and stuff like that. So we'd be able to, spend the day at the Rose Bowl and hear music and fireworks. And then having my kids, their entire childhood, same thing. We just always go to the Rose Bowl. It's right here. It's local. It's fun. You run into everybody that you know. It's just a really good spot.
Yeah, and there's just all those parks around it, the golf course, the swimming.
It's just so great.
There's also Jackie Robinson Field there, Kids Museum. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of cool stuff there.
Okay, and next?
The Norton Simon Museum. It was the first museum I had ever been to. And I think that's where I fell in love with Vincent van Gogh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think I went on first grade or second grade on a field trip, and it was the first place I had been. And I just, seeing all this art and stuff on the walls, I was just really taken away. And I mean.
And there was a Vincent van Gogh exhibition that you saw?
No, it was just
permanent?
one of his pieces that was there when I was little.
Oh.
When I was little. And then from there, I started kind of looking at books and looking at everything that he's done, and you know, his weird little story and his whole ear thing and all that fun stuff. But I love that museum. My daughter enjoys going to museums with me, so
nice.
We go there maybe once every couple years or so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always kind of the same, but it's comforting in a sense.
Right.
It's really nice. I like that museum.
I think the self-portrait is there, or maybe it's a replica. I don't know, but that's a first that someone has said, the Norton Simon.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Rose Bowl, and even, I believe somebody said Santa Anita before.
Yes, yeah. But Norton Simon, I mean, that's a world-class art museum here in San Gabriel Valley.
I mean, it's so, I feel like it's so underrated, you know? I mean, people go and, I mean, it's right there. But people drive by it every day, and it's not a big deal, but I really enjoy it. I think it's a really cool place.
Well, Ryan, the time has flown by really fast, but thank you so much for sharing about your journey and the history, you know, what you've gone through and your company. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you?
Best way is just going to my website, 9to5marketing.com. You can either fill out a form, or you can just give me a call.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I talked so much.
Oh, no, that's...
No, not at all.
It makes our job easier.
Awesome.
Well, there you go, SGVers. That's another episode for you. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll have you another guest next week. You can reach us at sgvmasterkey.com. Leave us a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the SGV Master Key. You can find the full back catalog of the SGV Master Key at sgvmasterkey.com and wherever you get your podcasts. This show was produced and edited by Russell Mono and Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks again for listening or watching. We'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.